That means we're good to go. Somehow the intro got reversed. John Statler is here from Washington Street Pawn, and also joining us in studio. Want to mention Patriot Defense, and of course, first of all, Todd. Todd had an exciting ride in. Todd Eccles this morning because he was down in the in Southern California. They call it Bahaing, but they don't have the snow. But that's a little bit like what you were doing.
Oh yeah, that actually wasn't this morning. That was yesterday
Oh,
morning. I since I've got it plowed, I just didn't want to spend hours out there pulling people out. But it was exciting. I got about a 400 or 500 yard driveway, and the only thing that could get through it was my old '72 Scout, and she just ate it up. And I broke a tow hook off my wife's Tahoe and sent it through my back window, and it's really exciting.
this is just a typical daily life in Idaho, especially in winter. Well, first of all, thank you both for coming back. I haven't been here for a while on Fridays, and so I missed all the excitement last week. I was away, but we have a lot to catch up on. Before we get into some detail on some problems with foreign ammunition and the like and other things we're going to talk about today, I did see something yesterday. A fellow in North Dakota has introduced a bill in that state that will copy our concealed carry law because they've been looking at what's happened here since it took effect last summer. And it's now the blueprint for a lot of other states because it shows that, there's been no lawless Wild West going on.
Yeah, in fact, what happened here? Nothing. The thing that did happen is it showed. We talked a few shows back. More and more people are wanting to take the class and get educated. So if it's going to force that, that's awesome.
As long as we take their weather, they can take our law.
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
First,
I
for,
went to college in North Dakota and say I wouldn't trade them. Yeah, for the
what
weather.
part of North Dakota?
Fargo.
Yeah, it's mightily cold up there. I had a brother-in-law who lived in Detroit Lakes, and he used to tell the stories about 35, 40 below zero most mornings. And yeah, I'm sure walking to class was always an adventure.
Well, your eyes and teeth would hurt and your boots would freeze and sound like you're wearing tap shoes when you'd walk inside. Yeah, it was rough. I'll take this weather any day.
Does the weather? I mean, if you're outside, does it have any impact on your firearms?
I'm sure John can help me out here, but I was actually thinking about a story this morning as I walked out to my car. When I spent 6 years in Kansas, it was high humidity and cold, and that doesn't always mix real well. But over there was a lot of areas, a lot of stores, the businesses that you could not carry your firearm into. So if you needed to go into that place of business, you would actually unholster your firearm and leave it in the car, or leave it in your car safe. You do that for about an hour this time of year, and then you reholster it. Tell you what, nothing will wake you up more than putting a cold piece of steel against your belly, especially if you're carrying in the waistband in the middle of winter. It'll wake you up.
But as far as firing, it's not going to change anything.
Uh,
Uh, well, the biggest thing you have to look at is some lubes work better in the cold than
right.
in the heat. And when I was in the military, we had different lubes for the cold and the hot, and you can get different ones. But in general, they will work. The biggest problem you're going to have is, if you leave it out in your car and then you bring it in to a warm environment, it's going to start to, get water condensing on it inside, on the
Right.
outside, and that's the biggest thing you need to do is make sure that you dry it properly and all that.
You mentioned military. We had a teacher in school who told us the story when he was fighting in North Africa in World War II that the rifles all had cosmoline in them and you had to keep them cleaned out. But he said you do that in desert sand as well. And he said so we spent less time fighting anybody and we spent a lot more time just keeping rifles clean in that condition.
Well, if you're depending on a firearm or a rifle or handgun or whatever it may be, whether you're at war, whether you're in the military, whether you're at home just concealed carrying, that tool could save your life. That's why you carry it. That's why you have it around. So you want to make sure it's in fine working order at all times.
I'm going to talk a little bit about ammunition today, and sometimes ammunition that may be really cheap comes from places around the world, as I understand it, that can be a little dangerous. John, and there's been some recent experience with that here locally.
Yeah, we've had people coming in and they're getting stuff from Russia and Slovakia and all these other countries. And I'm not going to do a broad brush on this and say they're all bad, but you are getting some that aren't good. The problem with them is they're inconsistent. You might have too much charge in one, not enough in another. We had a firearm we had a problem with, and we're still not sure, but we think it was a combination of ammo and maybe barrel. The big thing though is we want to talk about what happens if you get a misfire on one of these, and what happens if you get like a squib. I was going to let Todd kind of talk about that because that's his thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
you gotta know how to clear them. You gotta know what to listen for. If you're shoot, excuse me, if you are shooting your gun at the range, and I told this people in my classes, if we're shooting on the range and you pull that trigger and it goes bang, but a hole doesn't appear where a hole should appear, you need to stop, and you need to not pull the trigger again. You need to stop. We need to look at that gun. Excuse me. If we need to field strip it and take it apart and actually look down the barrel, obviously you want to disassemble the gun if you can to look down the barrel. You don't want to turn the gun around and look around the barrel. Okay, that seems like I shouldn't have to say that, but I do. Um, if you're shooting that gun, the hole doesn't appear, and it's not quite of as a loud bang as it should be. You need to stop. Don't ever assume. Don't just pull the trigger again and have all kinds of problems. You can have guns detonating, barrels coming apart. We saw that picture Forrest brought in last week. I think he posted it up on his page. Bad things can happen, and that's one of the reasons why I always encourage too to wear eye protection, wear ear hearing protection, because if you've ever seen someone's hand after they're holding a handgun with something, you have squib load or something bad happens like that, their hands beat up and fragments can go everywhere, and you want your eyes protected. You want to be able to see. Your hand can heal. It's really hard to repair an eye to where it's going to be workable again. So
and that's something we do at Washington Street Pawn is if you have a question, let's say you're out in the desert shooting and something happens, you don't know how to take that gun apart, bring it to us. We'll take it apart, we'll check it for you. We got whether you bought the gun from us or not, we just want people to be safe.
If you're buying from somebody in, as you say, Russia or Bulgaria or whatever, and you don't really know what you're getting, I think too, and people probably should come see guys like you first before they actually make a purchase like that.
Yeah, because there is some foreign ammo that's really, really good. Like if you get Fiocchi ammo or the SMB kind of Cellar and Bellet, really good stuff. I've shot tons of it, not a problem. But you get some of these no name, or if it's in a white box and it has Russia stamped on it, or something like that, and you're not familiar with it, come talk to us. I tend to try to stay with American ammo. We took a class a couple years ago, and between all of us in the class, we shot. Well, there's 8 of us, and we shot about 3,000 rounds apiece. We had one squib and one hangfire out of all that ammo. It's good American ammo, tends to be a little cleaner, more consistent. So if you're trying to shoot and get better, you need that consistency there too.
Is it also people, if they've had some ammunition sitting around the basement for a long, long time, should they be a little careful about that?
yeah, go ahead.
Well,
You're the
it,
ammo expert.
it kind of, I wouldn't say expert, but I've seen a lot of stuff. How about that? I've seen a
Right.
lot of things walking the
Both
door.
of you have
Yeah.
handled a lot more of it than I have.
Yeah. In general, if it looks okay, take it out, test fire a little bit of it, be a little more attentive. Like, is it acting correctly? You should be fine. Now, if you pull it out and it looks corroded or it looks funny,
Green.
you're green, uh, maybe bring it into us. We'll look at it. And sometimes you can throw it through a tumbler and clean it up and it'll be fine. Sometimes you can't. We're seeing most of that with 22 though, because 22 is so hard to get. People are pulling out 22 that their grandfather bought.
Yeah.
So that's
And if you think something's unsafe to shoot, obviously, you have any second thoughts about shooting it, don't shoot it. And if you need to dispose of it, find someone who reloads. They can pull it apart. That way, no one will ever have to pull the trigger on it. Okay, you don't want to just necessarily throw it away in a landfill or whatever. Have someone who reloads. They've got bullet pullers. They can pull them. They can dump the powder, get rid of the powder, and they still possibly have a piece of brass that's usable. They've got a bullet that they can still use possibly. So might as well recycle some of that stuff instead of just sending it all to the landfill. I know I had a bunch of 270 shells years ago rolling around. I think they might have been my grandpa's because that's what rifle I shoot. And I grabbed one to shoot it. It looked good, and I don't know if he had loaded it hot, if it was a reload. I don't know what it was. But I pulled the trigger on that 270. That's something I'll never forget. As stuff burned my face, and I was like, "Whoa!" Developed a flinch for a little while. I popped that piece of brass out, and it was split all the way up the side of it. And I still have it somewhere, and I'll never forget that. So I took all the rest of that old stuff and I pulled it and got rid of it all.
This is much more common even in older firearms too, right? Because we hear about back in the 1800s, firearms were not necessarily perfected at the time, and that there were a lot of misfires and the like.
Well, you got to watch too, because you can buy ammo right now that's loaded and rated as plus P or plus P plus, and you need to look at your firearm. If you buy a new firearm, you need to look at it and see what it's rated for, because if that frame is not rated to handle a plus P load or a plus P plus load, don't be, it may not go boom the first time, but over time you'll weaken that frame and you'll have all kinds of problems.
Got to ask
Yeah.
the two of you about the businesses before we get to the break in a couple of minutes. John?
Washington Street Pond, we're on Facebook. You can contact us there, or you can call us at 208-735-0012.
And only a few blocks really from the radio station as the crow flies.
Yeah, we're pretty close.
And
Right down on Washington across from Platt Electric.
and that's on South Washington, so people are coming in from out of town. Gives them a little bit of an idea where to find that. If you're coming, I don't know, from Addison Avenue, it depends on which way you're turning, I guess. Turn south. We'll tell people
Yeah,
that, not
go
right or left.
south.
Turn
Yep.
south. And of course, Patriot Defense.
Yeah, Patriot Defense. I am on Facebook. You can find me there. Go ahead and like the page, and I'll keep you abreast of everything I got going on. Whenever I schedule new classes, it'll be on there as well. And I don't mind the likes. You can call me. You can text me at area code 620-794-6223. And also, I announced last week, and it's still planned for next month, is I'm going to get a podcast up and running. I just got my first batch of equipment in this week. The rest of it kind of was delayed because of the weather, but it's on its way, and you guys will be the first to know when I get it rolling.
You've inspired me because I ordered one of these microphones that we have here, and I'm actually having it. Should arrive today, according to the people I ordered it from, but I don't think they accounted for weather. But I'm going to try to do this myself from home now and then because I can't keep my mouth shut. So it's
Well, there you go. You can come over. I can interview you on my show. We can talk about your foray back into the guns.
And we all want to point out too as well. You have a class. Is it this weekend?
I do have a class. It's actually tomorrow, and I got my lane plowed. Everyone can get to it. I was so worried about Tuesday or Wednesday when I had 4-foot drifts in my lane, but it is cleared unless it snows again. Everyone can get there, and I still have a couple spots open. If you guys are someone's interested, just get a hold of me. They can call me or text me at area code 620-794-6223.
We want to point out both Todd Eccles and John Statler are available to take some of your telephone calls as well after the break. There'll be a short break coming up here. We want to point out, too, as well, you're listening to Top Story with Bill Colley on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. And we look forward to chatting with you. If you have any questions about firearms, trading, ammunition, or various models, keep us on the air, and we'll answer all those questions in the next 40 minutes. Talking firearms this morning, and joined by Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. Also, John Statler is here from Washington Street Pond. Bill Colley with you as well. It's 21 minutes after 9 o'clock, and temperature is up to 9 below. Can we get a cheer for that?
Yeah.
And you're listening to News Radio 1310, KLIX, and NewsRadio1310.com. Temperature, of course, will warm up probably to about 9 above before the day is over with, but warmer weather is on the way. Telephone number for our program, 736-0300, 736-0300. And just a quick reminder to people, next Wednesday morning, Dr. Jonathan Tripp scheduled to join us in studio between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. Dr. Tripp is going to be talking to us about medical issues, and if you have one of your own, feel free to give him a telephone call. His office is located on Fillmore Street on the north side of the city, directly across from the main post office. He is still looking for new patients, and in fact, often, not always, but generally they can see you on the very same day if you call in the morning with an ailment. And remember, life's too short not to feel good. I just was reading something yesterday online. Some writer, he sort of tweaked the mainstream media in this country by asking them how many people knew somebody who owned a pickup truck, because the top 3 selling vehicles in America are the Ford F-Series, the Chevy Silverado, and the Dodge Ram. And so apparently many people who live in big cities and work at large newspapers and the like took offense at that. And the writer of the piece I was reading said, better question for them is to ask how many of them know someone who owns an AR-15, because that's America's most popular rifle.
Right.
And so I think that we talk about firearms on this program because culturally it's part of who we are here. But in other parts of the country, they're still coming to grips with all of this, no pun intended, I guess. But, when you ask people those questions, around here you get a pretty good answer. People pretty much raise their hand and say, I do. They don't really know someone they own on their own.
Well, I saw a picture on Facebook, a meme, and it related to the snow and 4-wheel drives. It says, so you live in southern Idaho and you don't own a 4-wheel drive? Same thing should be, you live in southern Idaho and you don't own an AR-15?
Well, yeah, and that's the thing. People come in all the time. They're saying, my friends have one. I've heard these things are great guns. I want to try one. And the amount of different calibers you can shoot through them now, it's just amazing. It's like, why would you not own one? I tell people it's the tinker toy for adults. You get it and you can make it into whatever you want. Get the basic parts and then just play.
And for people who you've heard this comment sometimes from, we don't want to criticize any specific politicians, and there aren't any around here, but they'll say, "I don't know why you need that for hunting." Well,
Well,
because it works, right?
well, my answer to that is if you look at any hunting gun, it started out as a military gun. Some of the greatest hunting, we'll look at the 1903. It copied the K98, which is a military gun, and most our hunting guns are based off that. People are hunting Mosin Nagants now. Those are military guns, SKSs. Every advance that we've had in firearms and even hunting guns has come because of the military. And it's just this is the next step. We use these in the military, so I know it, I like it, I want to hunt with it. Why shouldn't I?
Well, and you can hunt with it. It's going to fit everybody. They've usually got adjustable stocks on them, so I can hand it to my kid, and as long as the caliber's right for what they're hunting, hand it to my kid. They can shoot it. It's light. It's easy to pack, and it'll fit them. And then next year when they grow 10 feet, because that's what the kids do, you can pull that stock out a little bit. You don't have to go buy them a whole new rifle. It's fantastic.
And I think a few years ago, I heard a comment from somebody about, well, I'll get to this in a moment. We'll squeeze a telephone caller in here. But I want to get to ease of use of various firearms. Caller, want to mention it's 9:25 and you're on the air on KLIX.
Yeah, good frigid morning to everyone, gentlemen.
Yeah.
Well, I own 2 pickup trucks and 3 centerfire rifles, but I don't own an AR-15. So what are the calibers that are available besides 223 and 308?
Pretty much any caliber that you can think of, you can shoot through them now. I mean, 6.5, 270, 260. I mean,
Blackout.
300 blackout. You can shoot AK rounds through them. You can jump online and look for a list of calibers, and it's probably 30 calibers long. It's just which one you want to shoot depends on do you need an AR-15 or an AR-10, which is the 308 version of it.
Caller still with us? No, I guess that answered the question. That's usually a good sign.
Yeah.
We wanted to point out that the telephone number to reach the program, 736-0300, 736-0300, or if you aren't near the telephone, you can email me any comments or questions at bill.colley, that's Colley, at townsquaremedia.com. Our next caller joins us, and caller, you're up next. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Hey, good morning, guys. How are you today?
Good.
Hello?
Hello.
Sure, go ahead.
Can you hear us?
Oh, good. I'm sorry. 2 things real quick. Number one, you were talking about condensation, about taking a weapon out of a real cold environment into a warm environment. Someone told me once, and I've tried it, slip it into a Ziploc bag while it acclimates. Granted, you have to be safe and you have to know where it's at and all of that. But if it's a major differential, or if you're going into a moist environment like a home, sometimes that works. And then secondly, and I'll do this without me being on the phone, would you talk about some of the different smaller calibers like 22 Magnum, maybe 380 or something like that for beginning shooters or women that are just getting started, so they start out not being afraid of the gun and how the gun jumps? I mean, obviously, your guest training course is probably the best place to start, but if they're intimidated by the firearm, they might not want to move forward. Thanks, guys.
No problem. I can grab that one. I've had a lot of people, a lot of women come to class, a lot of beginner shooters come into my class, and just because it's a small caliber like a 380 does not mean it is the gun for a beginner shooter, because most of those 380s are tiny, tiny, tiny. They're tiny little what they call pocket guns, mouse guns. Now there's some larger ones, and those are better. But the smaller the gun, even if it's a small caliber, the more kick it's going to have. I try to get everyone to shoot, and I like 9mm. I try to get everyone to shoot, especially a beginner shooter, to shoot a full size, if they can hold it in their hands, a full size 9mm, because it's going to be plenty of stopping power. It's going to be able to stop someone. It's not going to jump around in their hands. And most people look at me and go, man, I really like that gun. I said, well, that's a start. You learn on that, and then you can go for a smaller gun. If you want to carry a 22 mag or a 22, that's better than trying to beat someone off with a stick. Go for it. I have a lot of 22 handguns come through the class, and if that's what you're comfortable shooting, I'd rather see you carry that than nothing at all.
John, one of your counterparts told me about 6 months ago, he said that for a lot of people who are starting out, he recommends a Glock. The 19, he said, because it's not going to have a lot of, kick with it, and it's going to be easy to use for someone who's just starting out.
Yeah, Glocks are, especially the 19, is kind of in that perfect size because, like Todd was saying, It's big enough you can hold on to. It has a little bit of weight, so you're not going to get a whole bunch of kick. But if you want to carry it around, it is small enough you can carry it around. And I totally agree with what Todd said. Is you get these little guns and they're hard to hold on to. Uh, we've had multiple times where women have come in and they've bought these little tiny guns and can't hold on to them, or they've bought big guns. We had a lady that bought like a 38, and she just didn't like it, just too
Yeah.
much kick for her. So we actually got her into a 22 mag in the same gun. It was a little LCR.
I have people
Yeah.
come in. I have women come in that say, "No, I'm not picking on husbands," but they say, "Hey, I came to take this class. My husband went out and brought me this gun, and they bring me this compact 40 cal." Oh my gosh, really? That's not going to work out well. The
Yeah.
one I recommend the Glock 19, the G19 is great. I really like my I have a Springfield Armory XDM 9mm 3.8. It's a double stack. It's a larger gun, but man, it does not hardly move when you pull the trigger. It's a 9mm.
We've
Yeah.
got more on the way. Wanted to mention John Statler and, of course, Todd Eccles are in studio with us this morning. We're talking firearms, taking more of your questions in the next half hour as well. So callers, be patient. These two gentlemen are going to stick around for a few more minutes, and just checking our temperature. Still at 9 below, just in case you're wondering. Just wanted to mention a telephone number to reach our program this morning, and we're at 9:33, and we're now up to 8 below. 736-0300, 736-0300. I have a caller who's waiting on hold, and I want to thank her for calling. We'll get to that call in just a moment. Do want to point out Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense in studio with us, as well as John Statler from Washington Street Pawn. And you have a quick note about the guy who plowed your driveway, don't you?
Yeah, I've been very, very concerned about people getting to my class on Saturday, and I got a buddy of mine that has a tilling business, has a tractor, removes snow, all kinds of stuff. And I was texting him frantic text messages the night before, and I don't know what time he showed up, but he showed up, and he got a good portion of my driveway done, and I appreciate it. His name is Mike Vinorni. You can reach him. I'll even throw his cell phone number out. Area code 208-539-6137. Give him a call. He'll get the work done. And by the way, Mike, tell me what I owe you. I haven't heard back from you yet. I want to get you paid.
We have a caller waiting on hold, and I want to thank her for her patience. You're on the air on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yes, I just have a question. I have a friend that came out to visit from back Washington who was a trainer for CIA and FBI and SWAT teams, and he had a knockdown 380 by Car Arms. I believe they're in Utah, that he wanted me to try. I thought it'd be a good personal gun for me, and I really like that gun. Now, do they do just custom work, or are they over the counter?
Car Arms, you can buy them just right over the counter. One of the things I like about Car Arms is they are smaller, but they tend to have bigger grips on them, so they're easier to hold on to. We actually have one in the shop right now, and I love it because, say, I can hold on to it even though it's a little tiny gun. But yeah, they have a catalog. We can order them right from our distributors for you.
Okay.
So come on in, and we can show you what we got.
But my question is, that was a knockdown model, and I really like that because I don't really need that front sight for what I would be carrying this for. Now, that's why I'm asking, is that a custom thing, or can you buy those like that?
No, all the Car Arms are over the counter. They don't really do any custom guns. So yeah, if it's in their catalog, we can get it.
Okay, I'll just come and talk to you. Thank you very much.
No problem.
Want to thank you for the telephone call. And again, the telephone number 736-0300. That's 736-0300. Or email me a question at bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. Next caller is with us. You're on KLIX. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you, sir. I have a PT99 Taurus, and I'm looking for a shoulder holster in a horizontal draw, and I wonder if anybody around here had any.
With those holsters, a lot of times specialty stuff, we may or may not be able to get it from our distributor. We can look and see, or there's a lot of places online that do it, or there's people in town that can build custom holsters. If you come in, we can look at our distributors and see. Sometimes we can get those cross shoulder holsters, and sometimes we can't. So come on in, we'll take a look for you.
Right. Okay. Yeah, it's similar to the Beretta 92, and I just wondered if I'd like to get my hands on one and try a couple before I spend, $150.
Yeah, those shoulder holsters tend to be fairly spendy, but we might have one in the shop you can try on.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
No problem.
I want to thank you for the call. We were talking earlier about the ease of use of an AR-15. A few years ago, I saw a television program, I don't remember, maybe History Channel or somewhere, about the Kalashnikov, because since it was invented in the late 1940s, it is apparently the most copied or counterfeited firearm in history because of the ease of use, because it's easy to clean, and even if it gets dirty or takes a beating, it keeps working and working and working. And the AR-15 obviously has a very similar reputation.
Well, the biggest difference between the AK and the AR is the AK is a piston design, so it runs on piston. You can abuse it a little bit more. It's harder to shoot. It has a lot more recoil going through it. Now the AR is, when it was first fielded, it got a bad reputation because the people that fielded it to the military said you didn't have to clean it. So they didn't even issue cleaning kits. So yeah, they started to jam up and all that kind of stuff, along with some other things they kind of did
You
odd.
mean some bureaucrat somewhere made that decision?
Yeah, he's like, "Ah, don't
You
clean it,
mean you're
it'll be
supposed to
fine."
clean your guns?
Yeah, yeah, which is crazy.
I got a problem at my house then.
But nowadays, the way they make those, they'll run and run and run and run, and even if as long as you lube them, you don't even have to clean them all that much. There's a guy who is doing a test with a Colt 6920, kind of a basic military rifle, and he has something like 30,000 rounds through it without cleaning anything but the barrel and just lubing it. That's just lube it, and it'll run and run and run. I mean, they're workhorses.
And I noticed I was out at the range one day at Shaw shooting with Forrest, and when you mentioned that, there's just even for a young person, you mentioned it's adjustable, Todd, but I noticed it's not going to knock anybody over. It just it's so smooth, I guess is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah, there's not a whole bunch of recoil to it. I think I read somewhere where they can measure kind of felt recoil and it's like 4 pounds or something like that, or 3.6 pounds. It's very, very little recoil. I mean, you could hand it to a 10-year-old and they could shoot it.
I have.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, no, my son always wants to shoot it, and so we go out as much as we can, obviously. But he likes to shoot everything I have. But he really likes the AR. I'm sure it has a lot to do with the look, and everyone talks about the AR-15s. But you know what? It works for him, and he can shoulder it. He can hold it. It's great.
We have a short break coming up, but I do want to mention we'll take more of your questions if you have them at 7360300. We're talking firearms today on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. John Statler is here from Washington Street Pawn. Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. We'll tell you a little bit more about how to get in touch with them, too, in the next few minutes. And Bill Colley on Top Story. And hope you can stick around. We've got still at 8 below zero, 20 minutes away from 10 o'clock. Got a couple of guests with us in studio. And Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. John Statler from Washington Street Pawn. Bill Colley with you as well on News Radio 1310, KLIX, and newsradio1310.com. I've got to ask the two of you guys, as long as you're here, about how they get in touch with you again. We'll start with Todd at Patriot Defense.
Yeah, you can find me on Facebook. I'm always on Facebook under Patriot Defense. You can find me. The little picture's got the crossed flags and an arm holding a handgun. It says Patriot Defense on it. You can text me. You can call me. Area code 620-794-6223. I will answer. I'll answer even if I'm out on the town with my wife. It doesn't matter. I've got two phones on me, and I'm always checking them. You can get a hold of me. I'm the guy that will respond right away.
And, of course, over at Washington Street Pawn.
Yeah, we're on Facebook too. Forrest answers pretty quick within a couple minutes, or you can call us at the shop. Our phone number is 208-735-0012, and we are located on Washington Street.
And I wanted to point out, too, if you'd like to reach these two men, give us a telephone call this morning, 736-0300. They're here to answer questions for you and hopefully make that experience, whether it be buying or training, to make all of those things a little easier for most people. And I had a quick question, since we were talking about just varieties of firearms and what's comfortable for people's use. Jack Johnson was telling me one day, he was in studio, and he was saying that he's a big fan of revolvers, and I've brought this up before. Is there a difference in how you train with a revolver versus a pistol?
Well, yeah, there is. I mean, there's obviously there's differences in revolvers and semi-automatic handguns. Okay, there's different ways you reload. Okay, you can carry spare magazines for semi-automatics. You carry speed loaders for revolvers, or you just have some rounds loose in your pocket. People do that as well. You got to learn how to manipulate them a little differently. There's different ways to load them, different things you got to do, different safety things with them. Revolvers, for some people, can be a little more difficult to shoot, especially if there's a little snub nose. They typically have a longer trigger pull, to get that nice double action fire, a real long trigger pull. So you got to be, you kind of have to almost be a little more stout in the wrist area. Sometimes I get women in there, and they're not as robust as guys, and sometimes that trigger pull really bothers them, and they will actually pull that long trigger and actually tilt the gun up a little bit. So you have to look at things like that. And then I've had women come in that can shoot a revolver better than me. So it all depends on the person, but there is a lot of different ways. You got to learn different trigger response, different trigger pulls, different safety issues.
And from your perspective, John?
The big thing we look at is a revolver. It'll never fail you. It's not going to double feed. It's not going to jam. If you let's say you get a dead round, just pull the trigger again. It's going to go to the next cylinder. It's
Right.
going to set it off. Now, what you're giving up is round count, because a cylinder, a revolver, 5, 6 rounds. A semi-auto, 15, 17 rounds. Uh, but that's the big thing is if you're not going to practice, if you're not going to go out and train yourself how to clear jams, how to get dead rounds out of the cylinder, I tell people go with a revolver. Now, if you're going to go out and you're going to practice, you're going to take Todd's class and he's going to teach you how to do this, you can take it, use a semi-auto, it's going to be fine. And that's kind of how we look at it. And then the other thing, though, with a revolver is you don't have to pull the slide back to put that first round in there, whereas semi-auto, we get some people that don't have the hand strength to put that first round in there, pull that slide back, release it, and then we always say, get a revolver, because all you got to do is load it up, slow the cylinder, you're ready to rock and roll.
And I'm not disagreeing with you because I agree. But then I've had people that can't pull the slide back, so they pick up a revolver and they don't have the hand strength. Depending, on if they're older, sometimes they don't have the actual hand strength to actually pull that long trigger either. I just tell everyone, figure out what you're going to carry, what you like to shoot, train for how you carry, train for what you carry, and just train, and get proficient at that method. Find the faults.
Is there a difference in grip, though, or stance between a revolver and a pistol at any point?
No, not really. I mean, you use the isosceles or the weaver for either one. I mean, typically, I think most guys that shoot revolvers are. I mean, I know I'm going to get hate mail. I'm not going to say old school. That's the word that popped. You knew what I was going at.
Yep.
They're going to use the weaver stance,
Yep.
and that's fine. That's a very viable stance. I have nothing wrong with that. So
Yeah, basically what it comes down to is a good shooting stance is a good shooting stance no matter what you're shooting. So either way,
yeah,
but
I would say the biggest thing is you got to know the trigger on a revolver.
But both hands.
both hands.
Both hands.
Both
But
hands.
you also need to know how to shoot one-handed too, because let me point this out. They're not called hands guns. They're called handguns. Okay. You need to be proficient right-handed and even left-handed. When I tell everyone in class, hey, we're going to shoot one-handed, right-handed, I get moans and groans. Then I tell everyone after we shoot that 7 rounds, okay, we're going to do this left-handed now. What? I'm like, yeah, but if they're concentrating, and most of them are concentrating and paying attention even more if they're left-handed, they're like, wow, I shot better than I thought I would. Well, yeah, because you're trying harder.
Well, people like me, I've got a lazy eye, and my left eye is better, but I'm right-handed. And so when I was a kid, at least when we were shooting, rifles, I would flip it over to the left side, and my dad would ask me what I'm doing, and why are you doing that? And I'd have to tell him because I could see what I'm doing. But with obviously a pistol, which I normally have two hands on, I've ended up closing my right eye and seem to be able to do that just fine.
And there's actually a new way, and I tell everyone, we're not going to teach you this in my class, that you can try it if you want once or twice. But the big thing now is shooting with both eyes open. And it's a muscle thing in your eyes. And I've worked on it, and I can do it. I can actually probably shoot better. But you got to really dial it in, because when you first try it, you're seeing like 3 different images. And you got it. It's weird to explain. You're nodding like you understand what I'm talking about.
Shoot a lot of
You got it.
rounds,
You
yeah.
got to bring your eyes together and focus on that one. It's better, and you can be more proficient. I tell everyone to work on it.
Well, the nice thing about going to a class though is you can learn how to shoot that'll work for you. My
Right.
brother he is left eye dominant, right hand dominant. So
Cross-eyed,
yeah,
yeah.
so he shoots right-handed, left-eyed, and what you do is you cheat the gun over a little bit and you cheat your head over a little
Yep.
bit. Takes a lot of rounds, but he's actually a lot better shot now when he learned to do that. But he learned to do it at a class,
Mhm.
and that's why classes are so good, because you can say, well, this is how I am, and then Todd can say, okay, this is the best way to shoot.
And some people come in, they don't know. I say, what are you, right eye dominant, left eye? I don't know. Well, how you been shooting? We've already gone through like 10 rounds. I don't know. Some people close their eyes when they pull the trigger. Okay, we'll watch you. We'll figure it out. We'll help you with that. I'm not trying to make fun of anyone. I'm just saying that's what happens. Come to class. We'll get it figured out.
And closing the eyes, though, the problem is sometimes when you do that, you actually literally move your hands.
Yeah, you're almost when you're closing your eyes. I put that with a flinch. Okay, you're
Yeah.
flinching, and so when you close your eyes, you're flinching. You're putting that gun down. Your body's trying to take on the whatever recoil it might have, trying to compensate for it. So you're actually pushing the tip of the barrel down a little bit.
We have about 10 minutes left, and I do want to point out, if you've got a comment or question for our guests, telephone number 736-0300, 736-0300. Also, my email address, if you'd like to ask the question by email, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com, bill.colley@townsquaremedia.com. And, of course, you're listening to Top Story on News Radio 1310, KLIX, newsradio1310.com. John Statler here from Washington Street Pawn and Todd Eccles from Patriot Defense. We had a conversation off air earlier about ease of using an AR-15, and it brought up this famous quote from he's vice president for a few more days. Take a listen.
You don't need an AR-15. It's harder to aim, it's harder to use, and in fact, you don't need 30 rounds to protect yourself. Buy a shotgun. Buy a shotgun.
Now that got a lot of attention at the time, but as it turns out, anybody who knows firearms said he's wrong about this, because obviously I don't think he's ever fired around it in his life.
Yeah, it's we were actually talking offline. You can go onto YouTube and you can look up videos that people have of people shooting ARs and shooting shotguns. And shotguns are much harder to manage, much harder to shoot. And the whole you don't need 30 rounds. Well, it's the whole I'd rather have the 30 rounds not need them than need the 30 rounds not have them. You don't necessarily need to. If you're defending yourself, you don't need to shoot somebody 30 times. But if you shoot them once or twice, go ahead. And it's going to be a lot easier to do that with an AR than it is a shotgun. Now, a shotgun, you're going to get a bigger pattern, and you're more likely to hit them the first time.
Yeah, or somebody else.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my wife's not real big, and I'd rather her shoot my AR-15 than my shotgun. That's gonna beat her up. I mean, I have kids, and my kids, I've worked with them quite a bit. They go shoot, trap, and skeet, so they could be okay with a shotgun. But for someone who doesn't go out and go shooting very much, if I were to hand my wife my 12 gauge, it'd probably set her down. AR-15, not so much.
Well, go ahead, John. I had a follow-up to that.
That's and the other thing we're seeing too is people come in and they say, "Well, I want an AR-15 for home defense in my house." And you brought up kind of a good point. If you're going to shoot that, you need to know what's going to happen to that round. You need to know where everybody in your house is. So there's kind of a word of warning. That round will travel through multiple walls,
Yes,
maybe out of your house. So you need to be aware when you're shooting because you remember it is a high-power rifle. It's gonna punch through stuff.
Well, and that more often than anything else, but even with a handgun, if you have a handgun at home for self-defense, you need to know what's on the other side of that sheetrock wall. Is that where your boys are in their bunk beds? It's the way it worked at my house. So you'd have to be real careful what's behind them. Always know what's behind your target. Even in a self-defense situation, you've got to be aware of everything.
Yeah, and even with a shotgun, because you're shooting multiple 32 caliber rounds out of there, you know.
I wanted to point out as well for people tuning in this morning that you can give us a telephone call here. We've got a few minutes to go, 736-0300. That's 736-0300. We're at 9:52 now on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. And we've got 7 below at the moment, on our way maybe to 8 or 9 above before the day is over with. And, we talked earlier about weather and firearms. The man called in and he mentioned putting something in a Ziploc bag. And I know this might sound ridiculous, but somebody taught me years ago that if I was making a tossed salad, if I put some paper towels in the bowl and put it away, that would help absorb the moisture and the salad would stay fresh for a couple of more days. And it struck me as I was listening to him. If you came in that situation and you wrapped up your firearm in the quicker picker-upper, would it actually help keep the thing dry in that situation?
It'll help. Anything you can do to, like he's saying, the bag will keep the water from condensing on it, or if you put paper towels around it to get it off the gun. Anything you do to get that moisture off the gun is going to help.
What I do with my shotguns after I go duck hunting, and since I don't clean them, obviously, I bring them home. I don't put them right in the safe. I don't ever put any guns right in the safe, especially if it's colder outside, that kind of thing. I make sure they're unloaded, and I leave them up. I lean them against the safe. I've got a separate room, lean them against the safe, let them just kind of air dry, and then take a look at them later on before I put them in the safe. If there's any rust, I take care of it. But that way you're not trapping all that moisture inside your safe either.
Speaking of shotguns, a couple of years ago there was a picture taken of Ted Cruz, and he was coming back from duck hunting. And media didn't understand why that because you basically lower the barrel, right? And
break it, yeah.
Yeah, you break the barrel. And they didn't understand what that was all about, and they thought that this is somehow, it was broken or it was dangerous. But you don't walk around with a shotgun without breaking it if you're at ease, right?
Right. I will say on his deal, he had it broken, but he had it pointing back behind
over
him,
his
even though it
back.
was broken. So typically, what they will normally do is you're supposed to flip those around and have them the other way. So at least it's kind of pointing at the ground, and it's
You
not.
see where it
Yeah,
is.
you see where it is pointed at. But that was just kind of something they were looking for, obviously. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
that irritated me when I saw that. So
See, these are all for political pictures. That's all.
Right.
I mean, they're not necessarily meant to make him look like he's a hunter versus
right.
and somebody picked that up somewhere. And then finally, we brought up this earlier about size of magazines. When New York State passed a law, and I guess it's still in effect, where they limited the size of a magazine. That was a comment made by the governor of that state. You don't need. And was it 15 is their limit? Is that it? Or
Well, it was 7 for a while, and I think they changed to 10 now.
okay.
Right.
And so the question is, does he know how many you need? Because if you have a home invasion, you may need all of those.
Well, how many? Yeah, how many? I mean, this sounds bad, but under stress in a stressful situation, how many shots are going to miss your target? I mean, what do you? Forrest, I know he spouted off the percentage rate at one point.
Well, the easy way to remember this is they say under stress, you will shoot twice as bad as your worst day on the range. Uh,
There you
we've
go.
seen, like, you can jump on YouTube and look at people shooting, and I've seen people trying to hit targets 3 feet away from them and missing. I was looking, there was an officer, and we'll call him a bad guy on the other side of a car. They were shooting over the hood. They both emptied their pistols, and nobody hit anybody. They hit the top of the car. They hit the windshield. I mean, these guys were 3 feet from each other.
Well, and you don't know how many times you're going to pull the trigger anyway. I've seen videos of law enforcement. Guy goes in, he got criticized. This guy came at him with his knife. He shot like 4 or 5 rounds, and the one guy's like, he was done after 2, but he shot 3 more. Well, you're under stress. Someone's coming at you. He probably doesn't even realize he squeezed that trigger 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
I was talking to a guy who did a simulator, and he did the simulator, and then one of the questions they asked him was, "How many times did you shoot?" And he said, "I don't know, once or twice, 15 times."
We've got a caller. We're going to squeeze one last caller, maybe 2 in before the end of the program. It's 9:55. We've got 6 below zero. You're on KLIX. Go ahead. Well, we're going to try the next line. Caller, you're up next. You're on the air.
Hey, good morning. I have a friend that was a Marine who shot a person like 4 times, and the guy was still coming at him.
That can happen. I'm sure that that you've got
yeah.
some people out there that are going to still be standing after that.
Oh, certainly. And some people say, well, it has to do with the caliber. It has to. Well, not always. You're under stress. You're in a stressful situation. Just because you can stand at the range and you can make perfect tiny little groups in your paper, or even shoot quicker and do great at the range, it's a lot different in a self-defense situation. You're not necessarily going to get center of mass right where you need to. It may be a shoulder shot. Maybe you may miss something. So it may take more than one shot.
Not everybody, by the way, is James Bond who shoots people like most of us eat potato chips, right? It's just so nonchalant. He just.
Do you know what I do in my off time, Bill? Me and the scout.
The hitman.
There you go.
It's not your Aston Martin. It's your old 72 Scout.
That's right.
We want to thank the callers today for chiming in with us. Before we do wrap up, though, got about a minute to go. We want to ask these 2 gentlemen one more time for contact information at their businesses. Todd with Patriot Defense.
Yep. You can call me, text me, area code 620-794-6223. Find me on Facebook. Shoot me a message.
No pun intended.
No pun. Yeah. Keep an eye open for. I'll have a podcast hopefully next month if I can get all this technical garbage figured out. So.
And John.
Okay, we're at Washington Street Pawn. We're on Facebook, and our phone number is 208-735-0012, and we sell new and used guns, and every gun we sell comes with a lifetime warranty.
Get a gun and take a class. Go see them, buy a gun there. They'll give you a business card. You can take a class from me. It'll be perfect.
I want to know if Todd's new studio is going to look. Remember Charlie Ferguson from what was it, Hee Haw? And he had the studio with all of the egg cartons on the walls.
It might be. I'm working on a little bit of soundproofing. I want to make it look good, but I guess from what I'm told here, I think Brad told me this at the radio station. Soundproofing is not sexy.
No, so. It's you got to figure out a way to maybe keep it out of the camera range.
Exactly.
Put up a banner behind you after you soundproof.
A spray paint or something.
But I was told that that's not a joke. That in reality, that the egg cartons would do it. They would deaden the sound.
I got a bunch.
Maybe not styrofoam, but the old cardboard ones.
I need to buy a hot glue gun today.
You're gonna start eating a lot more eggs.
Yeah. I eat a dozen a day.
We'll talk to these fellows again coming up next week. And, of course, we just want to mention the Rush Limbaugh program is next following the news at 10 o'clock from Fox. And Bill Colley as well saying have a great weekend. And God willing, if the creek don't rise, they'll allow me to come back and do this all over again on Monday morning between 8 and 10 o'clock.